So my mom is a family practice doctor, and in the process of making daily videos, one of them that I made that was one of my most popular, much to my chagrin, was talking to my circumcising mom. Um, and so it's been painful to have be like continuously reminded of that. People who are following my channel have like asked about it more, and I'm like, I don't want to like think about it because like I'm trying to, I've showed her Elephant in the Hospital, I've showed her my podcast, I've showed her Eric Hopper's Sex and Circumcision. I'm definitely going to show her this documentary. But at some point, I asked her a little bit about conscious objection. She said she kind of thought about it, but it might be a little of a bit of a challenge. I know you didn't cover that in your film, but it's something that I think you said you would have liked to have covered.
We had
Um,
a sequence on it that'll probably be in the deleted scenes.
yeah. I'm curious, as I'm probably going to have another conversation with her soon, if you have any ideas on that or any suggestions, any thoughts.
So why would she not take that route? What's her reluctance there?
She said that it's like a lot of social pressure from the other doctors around her saying, if she doesn't do it, then someone else is going to have to come in and do it. And I think also partly just the discomfort of like talking to patients and trying to explain that. She understands that it's bad now and will say like, you don't really need to do it. But if she actually has to say no, I think that's like another um, step for her.
I think this is a challenge for doctors of framing.
Okay.
And there's two parts to this. There's whatever sort of emotional feelings she might have around the issue. And to me, the idea, I don't know if I can tell my patients no. I think that's kind of a cop-out. Doctors are actually incredibly good at persuasion. They have people come into their office who are paying them a lot of money to tell them their opinion, to tell them their expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Like on any other issue, they would say, I'm the doctor. This is what I think the best treatment is. This is what we do here. If a patient came in and wanted any other part of their child removed, they would just very easily say no. If a patient came in and said they wanted their daughter circumcised, they would very easily say no. And so I think that part of the challenge that doctors have is that this issue has been framed to them so much in a particular way that they don't see how easy it would be to reframe a different way. So imagine that you are the doctor and someone comes into your office and they say, I want to have my child circumcised. The way that a doctor might say no now, if they were to assume their old framing, would be, well, we don't do that here. You don't need to do it. I don't know if it's right. These are all negatives. These are pointing towards the thing that you don't do. And when you frame it in a negative, it's a bit like saying, don't think about a purple elephant. Like, what do you think about, So you're talking, in the language you are using points towards harm and, malfeasance on the part of doctors. And those are not things you want associated with your brand as a doctor, right? You want to talk about in positive. So here's how you'd frame it as a positive. Someone comes into your office, they say, we want to have your child circumcised. You say, our office practices the highest standard of care. And it used to be that doctors thought that circumcision was a thing that you needed to do. And now our scientific and our knowledge and our thinking on this has evolved. And so we understand that this isn't a procedure you need to do. And in fact, could actually lead to complications for your child. It could reduce their amount of sensitivity. Then you go into all this stuff and you say, but our office practices the highest standard of care. And there are other offices you could go to. There's other doctors you could go to who would happily take your money and charge you for things that you don't need, because doctors make money on things that they do, not things that they don't do. But if you want to work with a doctor who has the highest ethical standing, who's going to work for your interests as a patient and say no to you, even when it goes against their financial interests, you should come to our office. And that's my profession, my opinion as a highly trained professional, that you don't need to do this for your child, and you would actually be doing a disservice if you were to do that. Now, again, if you want to work with people who want to just take your money, you can do that. That's totally fine. But our office is going to practice the highest standard of care. You
Right.
feel how different that frame is, and
Yeah.
how it points to their office and the positives of their office and what's important about the work that they do. And I think that doctors have just never approached it that way in terms of framing as the positives of this. And then you're like, if you want to give your patients more information, you say there's a great documentary out that's on this. There's this stuff on YouTube, whatever it is you want to say. But that way you frame it in terms of the positives. And again, like, I think that doctors, when they think about this issue, they think about saying no to it, not saying yes to a very high standard of care and ethics for their patients.
Right. It reminds me too of, how we've changed in terms of getting tonsils removed. We used to do that routinely. If someone came
These are
in,
great comparisons.
wanted to remove their child's tonsils preventatively, she'd probably say, no, we don't do that
Right.
anymore. It's just, that makes sense.
It's just a question of framing it in terms of the positive rather than the negative. And this, by the way, this is what the intactivist movement went through in its own internal presentation. It used to be an anti-circumcision movement, and again, they'd have signs that had like the pictures of the procedure and these very sort of gross and controversial things that are sort of shocking. And there was a movement that happened within that movement of, well, what if we, instead of framing ourselves as anti-circumcision, framed ourselves as pro-intact?
Uh-huh.
We are for the whole baby. We are for what if we? And you see a lot of pictures now that have smiling, happy babies, and take your whole child home. And this idea that this is a movement that is about the best for children and the men that they become.
Right. That makes a lot of sense too, in terms of like social change research that really shows that when you have a positive message, much like Foragen does, that we can regenerate the human foreskin, that it's really valuable, that it feels really, really good and provides these sexual functions, and that we can get you that back. Messages like that are actually often a lot easier to spread than, this horrible thing happened. Like, sorry, but don't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think that doctors have not had this presented in a similar way. They're still in the conscientious objection frame, which is about what you don't do, as opposed to what they're for. And if they actually frame it in terms of what they're for, then not only does it allow them to say no to this procedure, but it actually could even be almost a marketing gimmick of like those other if this is the movement for the highest patient care, the highest ethical standards. And if you just want people, because people know that doctors get paid to do all sorts of things that are against the patient's interest. They prescribe things that big pharma wants that maybe don't actually help the patient. They use medical devices that that they can charge for and things like that. And so when you frame it that way, now all those other doctors are not as good as our practice. And it actually frames you as the best practice in town.
Right.